it's easy to say, I have all the best ideas in the world. I have everything in the world. If someone would just give me a shot. That's not how it works. That's not how it worked for me. That's not how it works for anyone.
For episode 19, we sat down with Chris Pfaff, also known as Drama. You may know him from MTV shows such as Robin Big and Fantasy Factory. He's also the co-founder of Young and Reckless, a streetwear-inspired lifestyle brand, and has a podcast of his own called Short Story Long, which features guests like Kyrie Irving, Wiz Khalifa, and Damon John. We talk about his humble beginnings, life on reality TV, his journey with Young and Reckless, and his thoughts on content and how it's played a huge role in his life in the last few years. We had an awesome time chatting with him, hearing about his story and learning about his experiences in the apparel business and beyond, and hope you guys enjoy the conversation as much as we did having it. All right, here we go.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Founder Hour with Pat and Posh. We're here today with our special guest, Drama. And Drama, we're excited to be in the Young and Reckless offices today and, be with you and sit down and converse about your upbringing and, your journey and what you're up to these days. So thank you for having us.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. And we're here, man. Ground zero of the Young and Reckless headquarters.
Love it.
This is where all the magic happens.
Love it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, I know you grew up in Ohio. You're not an LA native.
Yep.
So tell us about your upbringing as a child out in Ohio.
Yeah, so I grew up in a town outside of Akron, Ohio. Pretty small, not like super hillbilly and wheat fields. But I always say, like, to give an example, looking out the window of my high school, there was a farm with cows, and we just watched the cows all day. And one of the biggest news days in the town was that one of the cows escaped and was running like through the streets, and people were trying to track the cow down, right? So like that's just to give you an example. Grew up. My parents are amazing. They're still together to this day. They taught us first and foremost that love and family and those things are the priority. And financially, like, once again, to give you guys an example, like, we didn't, we weren't like rich by any means or anything like that, but we never knew it. Like they chose, for instance, to like skip the expense of having cable TV. So I grew up without cable TV, but we just didn't know, like, oh, that's because we can't afford it or something like that. It was just like, oh, we'd rather you play outside. We took our kind of yearly trips. We'd pack in the minivan and drive down to Myrtle Beach. That was our spot. And that's kind of what it looked like. Me and my brother, I have a brother who's 4 years older than me. We absolutely fell in love with skateboarding around when I was probably 10. And I do think that was obviously influenced by my cousin, who's a pro skateboarder. But at the time, we never knew him growing up. He's 13 years older than me, and he's lived in LA since he was 16. And he's from a city 3 hours away, right? So I think that we were like, oh, he's so cool and whatever, and we want to do something cool, and it led to skateboarding. But that's all we did. We dedicated every minute of every day to skateboarding. I didn't play any sports. I didn't do anything. All I wanted to do was go mess around and skateboard with my friends.
Did you go to like a skate park with your friends, or were you guys doing like, shooting videos? Like, what was kind of
a little of both. So what it was, the kind of routine was, I grew up, this is funny actually, I grew up with triplets. They were my best friends. And their mom was going to nursing school and was always busy, and so their house was kind of the hangout because there was no adults. And they all three skated. They were my best friends. And so every day after school, or if I could get out of school early some way, or every weekend, I would pretty much just go to their house first. I remember when my brother got his driver's license, that was like the game changer, right? Because it was like, we can do anything. Yeah. And we would figure out where to go. Like, a lot of times we'd go to the local skate park and kind of warm up, and then we'd go, like, you'd go to downtown Akron, or you'd go to Canton, or you'd go to these different places and skate like at schools, or, like we call it street skating, right? And we just either, just have fun and mess around. And then as we got older, we started getting into like filming each other, and I bought a camera, and I kind of became like the filmer, and I ended up making a full skate video with all my friends and went that direction. But yeah, we were just acting. We were recreating what pro skate culture is out here. We were just kind of doing a mini version there.
Was your goal to always come to LA?
Yeah. So as I got older, so let's say I started skating at like 10, you become familiar pretty quick that LA is like skateboard capital of the world. And it's hard to explain. Maybe it's different now because of the internet and stuff, and actually the work that Rob did. But like, being a skateboarder in Ohio is not cool. Like you were an outcast. Like, it was still very much like the hot girls, like the jocks, and and nobody understood what skateboarders were doing. And so we just had this like dream of like in LA, girls like skateboarders. Like in LA, this is cool. And there was all the best skate spots, and it's warm all year round, and it was just like skate capital. So I just had this like dream of living in LA. And I knew I would say I wanted to live in LA from about age 14 on. And then from about age 16 on, I was dead set on like the moment that I graduate, I am going to LA one way or another. So yeah, I was dead set. I always say this, I wish there was, but there will never be another city or destination in my life that will compare to how I felt about Los Angeles. You know what I mean? Like you could say, hey, is there anywhere in the world you'd want to go? Sure, I'd be able to name you some places, but it's not even like a 1 out of 10 on the scale of what LA was. Like it was the dream thing.
So what was the vision that you had in your mind? Like, you're into skateboarding, you want to move to LA. Did you want to come here and be a professional skateboarder and just kind of be in that scene, or did you have other dreams
So
as well?
I wanted to be a pro skateboarder up until, once again, probably about age 16. At age 16, I knew I just accepted the fact that I wasn't good enough. And I just saw people around me, my friends, they were just better. And the funny thing is, a lot of that group of friends are pro skateboarders now. There's a kid named Kevin Turpening and Cyril Jackson, and there's all these kids I grew up in Akron, Ohio, that are now pro skateboarders, which is nuts. But I just looked around at them and I'm like, I'm just not good enough for whatever reason. And so that's when I got into filming. And I was like, well, I just want to be obviously in this industry. I want to find my place. And part of the way that I paid for my trip to LA was that I made this skate video with all my friends, and I sold it to all the local skate shops and said, this is what the Akron kids are doing. It's so cool, whatever. And that made me like $1,500. And so I put it towards my moving thing. But when it came, so that dream was kind of dead, and I had evolved into what else I could do. And to be honest, I always say this because it's mind-blowing to me. Like when I finally graduated, I remember emailing my cousin, Rob, and I remember saying, look, man, like I'm coming to LA. My brother had got a girlfriend. He was supposed to move with me. He had got a girlfriend, and so he didn't want to move. And so I was like, look, man, I'm coming to LA, like one way or another. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. Like I kind of know how to film. I can kind of take pictures. I can clean your floor. I can do literally whatever it takes. I just need to get there. And I remember thinking that living in LA, being able to pay rent in a studio apartment and like manage a skate shop, like Val Surf in the Valley was the one, right?
Yeah, it's like you made it.
I made it. Like I remember sitting on my friend's roof drinking 40s, which I don't know what the hell we were doing, saying like, look, man, I'm going to be there. Give me like 6 months. You guys can come out. We can drink all the beer we want. We can smoke cigarettes. We can just go skate everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, and that was literally like the dream, but I didn't have, it wasn't a targeted, like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to be a pro skateboarder, I'm going to make it. It was like, I just got to get out there. Ohio sucked for me. I get a lot of backlash for saying Ohio sucks. It doesn't suck. But
Well, elaborate on it. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, was it like just lack of opportunity, just kind of like a bubble?
massively. I mean, I think that the problem is like, I'm all for, there's different types of people in the world, right? And there's a lot of people, my parents, for example, live in Ohio, love their friends, hate coming out here to visit us. It's too hectic. They just don't like it.
Yeah.
Even like some people say, like, why don't you move your parents to LA? They would hate it. They would be miserable, And there's a lot of people that I know and that I grew up with that are like that. So not everyone has this like sort of weird ambition or drive. But for me, after I saw what LA had to offer, even past skateboarding, just the people and the excitement and the things going on, I just was like, this is not an option. Like I have to be there. There's something there. I always say I was pulled by like opportunity more than I was pulled by a vision. Like I didn't grow up saying I'm gonna go to LA and start a clothing line. I grew up and said I'm gonna go to LA, I'm gonna figure this shit out. You know what I mean?
How old were you when you were making the move to LA?
18.
So you had just finished high school.
Yeah, so the way that it went down, because this is kind of a good story too, is I said, okay, as soon as I graduate high school, I'm moving. My brother got a girlfriend right before I finished high school, and he was kind of like getting cold feet. And I was like, man, like, wow, what am I gonna do? I still was like, I'm moving. Graduated high school. The weekend after I graduated high school, that was on a Friday, I was skating with my friends. I fell skating, hit my head, had severe brain bleeding, skull fracture, was in a coma for 4 days, blood clot in my brain from the skull fracture, just done, right? Just out of commission. So I literally woke up. it's the trippiest feeling waking up 4 days later. Like your facial hair is just a little longer, and like your nail, and you're like, what the?
And you have
hell
no idea
happened to
what
me?
happened.
You don't have an idea. And I will say, because people always ask, like, I couldn't hear people talking, like in the coma, right? Like they say.
Yeah.
But I did feel like I didn't wake up like panicking. You know, like I woke up kind of knowing where I was, but not sure like why or what happened.
Right.
So all I remember is eating breakfast, and then I woke up 4 days later. But the problem was I had this blood clot in my brain, and so I couldn't leave. They were worried that I was going to have severe seizures and all these problems. And so I kept having to go get CAT scans every month to see if it had went away, and it never went away. And so finally in November of that year, I turned 19 in December. November 10th is when I moved here, and they said, look, we don't know. Like it probably will just fix itself. Like it'll probably just correct. If you can go, if you want to go. If you go and you start having dizzy spells and seizures and all this stuff, obviously you got to come back. We might have to do surgery, whatever. But just go for it. And so that's what I did. And I came, and I was super nervous when I first moved here because I thought any little thing was going to trigger like a seizure. But yeah, so that was right at the tail end. I turned 19 essentially a month later after I moved here.
And you came here with what? No money?
Yeah, I had $2,500, I think.
And you were living with your cousin?
Yep. So the way it worked was when my brother was 18, I was 14. My brother was so good at skateboarding. My cousin saw like a video of him skating and was like, oh shit, like my cousin's actually really good. So he's like, hey man, you should come out for the summer and skate with me. Like I'm going to be filming this video. Just come skate with me. I think you could really make it happen. And I was devastated, like beyond the worst. Like I said, LA was it for me. And then pro skateboarder, and then he's filming the DC video and whatever. And I was like, man, I'm never going to have this opportunity. By the time I'm 18, Rob's going to be married. You know, life is so not fair, me. And so when I turned 18 and my brother bailed, I sent Rob an email and I said, I'll do anything I can possibly do. You let my brother stay with you for 2 months. Is there any way I could stay with you for 2 months?
Looking back, now, do you think that decision of coming to LA and just figuring it out was the right one?
Oh my God, like so beyond the right one. You know what I mean? Because
you're still here, so clearly
I'm still
like
here and I'm just thriving, right? And it's because I just did it. I was so uncomfortable. I was scared. It's embarrassing to admit, but I remember the first week being here, I was like almost in tears calling my mom every night. Like I am way in over my head. Like all Rob's friends are 30 something. I'm 19. Like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But it was always this like spirit of mine to just go for it and figure it out and make it happen. So what ended up happening is I found a gap, and that opportunity ended up with me staying with Rob for a month, and then I went home. So I came November 10th. I went home December 20th for Christmas, and the goal was you find an apartment in that time, and then you go live there. And so I had found an apartment. I was ready to move in, and then like the day before I left or something, Rob's assistant quit, and he said, "Yo, you want to be my assistant?" And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like it felt so crazy. And all of his friends came to me and were like, don't do it. Like it's going to ruin your reputation, ruin your relationship with him. He's not, he's very serious when he works. And they're like, it's just your family. Like just keep it family and don't work together. So I'm like, look, I mean, worst case scenario, I hate it. I quit. I go work at Balsurf, right? Like that was the goal anyway. So I got my apartment. I said, sure, I'll do this, man. And when I came back out after Christmas, I had my apartment to go into, my little studio apartment in the Valley, and then I started working for him. So it was only that like, screw it, things aren't lining up for me. My brother doesn't want to move. This isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. But whatever, that actually led to me having a gap. I mean, I don't know. Had I moved here with my brother, maybe I wouldn't have got that. You
took this big risk. You came to LA. You didn't have a job, but there was an opportunity, and you're just like, I'm gonna take it. And it's with family. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So, what was Rob up to at the time? I mean, was this before the shows? Was it?
Yep. So before the show, so he was just a pro skateboarder. He was doing really well. He's always been really business savvy, but not anywhere near what he's doing today. He had he was sponsored by like Red Bull and DC and stuff like that. And my jobs were literally like making coffee for him, doing and folding his laundry, and then like driving down to DC to pick up a box of shoes and bring them back. And then we'd go skate. He'd be working on a new video, and so we'd go skate together. And it was just very not anywhere near kind of once we got into Rob and Big and that stuff. But still, for me, that was like crazy. You know what I mean? That was crazier than anything probably I could experience now. But yeah, very much just like the assistant for a pro skateboarder.
Just being in that scene.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy doing what you were doing?
Being assistant,
Yeah.
I've hated it.
You can cuss. It's okay.
Okay, thanks. I fucking hated it with every ounce of my being. Like, I love him to death, and there's nothing he like did or anything about that scenario that was like not what assistants do. But
Right.
I was a 19-year-old assistant, and he didn't treat me any differently. And I'm so thankful now because the shit I learned because he didn't baby me is the only reason I'm here. But it was rough, and I remember, and it's funny because I went and I met up the other day with a girl who used to be a production assistant on Rob and Big, and she reminded me. But I would literally, when we started filming Rob and Big, I would be so overwhelmed by like just getting yelled at by everyone, production people and Rob and all this stuff, trying to like literally do laundry with the laundry door closed and squeeze in the closet because I couldn't disrupt the filming and doing all this stuff. I would just go outside and have these like mini panic attacks of like, I'm just way in over my head. Like, this shit is just crazy. And it was rough, but I just always knew, like, obviously this leads to something. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a part of some real energy here. Like, this comes to something, but I hated every second of it.
So like you're at this point where like you said, you're like 19, 20 years old, and some of your friends were getting into pro skating, and maybe others were going to college, and you're Rob's assistant. What was going on through your mind? Like, what is this going to lead to? You obviously said there's something, but did you have any idea what that something was going to be?
No. So I'll say too, like, once again, if this makes any sense, and this is why I preach this a lot. I think that one thing that happens to young people is they kind of get their mindset on like a dream, and you stay so close-minded on that dream, and you're just missing other opportunities, right? And keep in mind, this is my path. Like, if I would have dreamt to be a rapper and I would have became a rapper, I would have had a different message probably. But my path, to show you that there is a different one, is I followed opportunity. And so when the TV show stuff started happening, even though I was so overwhelmed mentally by just all that was going on, and I never had the dream or goal of being any sort of celebrity, especially a reality star. It was everything in my instinct to go away from that, But I knew that there's obviously massive things happening here. Like, there's action, and I want to be in on the action, And so no, I had no idea what that meant. I just knew, like, grind it out, take the beatings, get in on the show however you can. That's how my character ended up being my character on the show. Like, there was moments when I was asked, there was a key moment when I was asked to rub Icy Hot on Big Black's bare butt. And that was the first moment I was called into a scene.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't do it, man. I just can't do it. It's crazy. Like, you want me to bare hand like this dude's butt. And I remember, this is so stupid now, but I remember going home that night and being like, I just blew it, man. Like, that was it.
Yeah,
you got
that was my
called up to the
opportunity.
majors, and you could have rubbed Icy Hot on this man's butt, and you blew it, and now it's over. And my life was over that night, right? And there was multiple opportunities, and there was one finally, I forget exactly what it was, but where I was like, sure, man, like, I'll do it, whatever. And it became my dynamic on the show, and that became my way in. And I just wanted to be a part of the action, But I didn't know why exactly. I was going to figure that part out later.
So when do the shows come into play? And I think another question I had is, when did the name Drama come into the picture?
I wish this story was better, but it came from that moment I wrote that email. That email of like, hey, I'll do anything.
To Rob?
Yep. Because I wrote this heartfelt email of like, hey, man, I will do anything. Like, I can film you, I can clean your floors, I can do anything. And my email address was Cause and Drama, like at AOL or something. And he wrote me back and said, Cause and Drama? What the fuck? That was the only answer.
Yeah.
And I was like,
No, it's actually cousin drama.
exactly, right? No, it's just change it. But I was like, fuck, there you go again. You blew it again, right? Like, that's it, man. You look like an idiot. And so literally it was from that. And I was like, fuck. And then when I moved, because Rob is literally everything is like a TV episode, right? He's a fucking genius. But he printed like my MySpace photos, which was, keep in mind, it was me in like LeBron James jerseys and looking like an idiot. But he printed them out and put them all across his kitchen table and told all of his friends, like, this is my cousin. His name's Cause and Drama. And he's coming out here. He's a rapper from Ohio. He told them that. Not true. He this, he that. He's in Ohio. This made up this whole story. And I got there and they're like, Drama, what up? And I'm like, what's up? And like literally, then they just started calling me drama, like kind of messing around. And then all of a sudden you're filming a TV show and it's drama, come here, drama. And then your little thing says drama and you're like, all right, there we are.
I guess that's who I
And
am.
you did sort of, I mean, that was sort of like a like self-fulfilling prophecy there, because you ended up making beats, right?
Yeah.
So
Sure
it was
did.
kind of like you already had a name.
was
That
drama
part
beats.
was that part was.
But that was my first attempt, right, at like finding my thing. So it's like get in on the energy and then find your thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just say this to anyone listening, like, or to you guys, like, just never pass the opportunity for like to feel the action if you can. Because a lot of times if you're in the action, the opportunities will present themselves
Right.
and there'll be way more. And I mean, there are trillions of people with great ideas and no action. There's a lot of people with a lot of action and shitty ideas that are making a lot of money. And so I just think like hunting down where the action's really happening and learning from that and learning what's really going on is such a huge lesson that I learned through that time.
And I think that's something that Pat and I kind of do, but how do others, like, how do they find the action? How it's not necessarily easy. You have to be kind of connected to the right people, or you have to be in the right place and the right networks. But, I guess what's a more pragmatic way of going about finding the action?
Yep. And I think that there's a bit of and not to like go at what you said, I think that sometimes the like have to be connected to the right people thing is a bit of a cop out, right? Because I think that what actually, unless you're like literally just born into a trust fund, right? And
Right.
You're just great. But I'm saying that usually there's some sort of value being exchanged on some level. At that time, my value was that I was willing to just work and do anything under the sun as Rob's assistant. And then on the TV show, I was willing to find a character that could be me and not worry too much about like pride for the sake of entertainment and fill a role. There were 20 other friends that tried to get involved and be a character on that show. And it never worked out because everyone wanted to be the cool guy or everyone wanted to be another Rob or everyone wanted whatever, right? I added value to that show. And so I think that the trick is like, why should people will give you so much of a shot. D and I both will give you guys hours sitting and talking because this is great. What you're doing is great. You're coming in with something of value and I can film my videos and I can use this. But you're not just saying, hey man, can we have a meeting? Because hell no. Exactly. Why would we you know what I mean? Like, I don't know you from this people. You found one thing that is valuable now to us, and now we'll talk to you for hours and hours anytime you want. You know what I mean? And the moment we first connected, it was like, yeah, of course I'll do that because whatever. And it's even more so that way now than ever because these big giants, these big gatekeepers don't control what's going on anymore. So that kid or these people who just started a podcast could be the key to your success one day, no matter how big you are. Like, you better kind of give everyone a shot because you never know who the next person is and you never know what their audience is going to turn into tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah, and it almost comes out of like fear too. I feel like you said, like there's these big, big shots like controlling industries. Yeah. And I feel like many young folks maybe look at that and like, I can't compete. I can't really have a voice in that industry. But like, especially these days with not only podcasts, but like any type of medium.
Yeah. And you
social media.
I mean, you can, and we're so blessed that you can now more than ever. I mean, there's a list of people. Like I did this podcast yesterday, and I was talking about the Paul brothers, right? Which I'm not a big fan of, but the guy was like, sometimes I feel, because the guy said I grew up watching Rob Dyrdek and Fantasy Factory. Sometimes I feel like Logan Paul is just taking notes directly from that. And I'm like, he is. Like, those guys were fans. Like when I first started Young and Reckless, they were blowing me up to do anything they could to help the brand. The fact of the matter is those kids who were fans, who were doing anything to help the brand, are now, like them or not, some of the most influential, highest paid, like they're it. Yeah. So like it or not, that happened in the last 6 years. Right. And that's just the way it works now. And those kids had no platform. They had no big kickstart. They didn't get a deal with Viacom, right? Like, so it's just realizing that that's true. And that's only going to become more and more true. And then from my perspective, what I was saying is like, it's easy to say, I have all the best ideas in the world. I have everything in the world. If someone would just give me a shot. That's not how it works. That's not how it worked for me. That's not how it works for anyone. And if you're not creating some level of value for that person, why it just doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
Why there's just nobody's in the business of charity like that, of saying, hey, everyone come intern with me for one day, I'll give you all the gems and you go and good luck to you. It just doesn't work that way. So I think the thing to a young person is like, what are you bringing to the table? And then bring it to the table. Say it, like, have no shame, have no DM everyone and say, yo, I have this podcast, it's doing really well, would love to have you on it. Here's some of our guests, whatever. Do it to everyone. Don't take one specific shot and say, like, once again, just because I think it's valuable. This kid the other day who I did a podcast with, who was incredible, reached out to me through my Instagram, and I don't think has many like listeners or anything like that. But he said, like, man, you were the one. You were the one I wanted to have on this guest. You were my top priority. And I said, don't do that. Like, let there be 50 ones, because you're going to get maybe one or two. If you set your heart on one, you're going to get crushed and you're going to lose, and that, who knows, if you have 50, but I'm really your one, somebody else that you're going to interview is going to know me and they're going to connect me with you or blah, 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 or you're going to build up so big that it's worth my time. Like, just pitch yourself, have value, but then shamelessly pitch yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So you mentioned D a couple times, and so D was actually the first guest of our podcast, and he's helped us out so much. He connected us with the H-Wood guys, and we interviewed them, and that was a great interview as well. How did you and D meet? How did that happen? I know D touched upon it a little bit when we talked to him, but I know you were doing a couple of the shows, and you guys connected at the time. How did that work out?
Yep. So here's the funny part of that story. I don't know if you told it or not. Is we had mutual. He was friends with Rob's manager at the time, or I think that was it. And the funny part of this story is, on Rob and Big, I hardly got paid. Like, I got $0 the first season. I think $750 for every episode I was in, which was like 3 on the second season, and then $1,500 for every episode I was in, which I think was 5 on the third season. So I was broke, right? And I saw Rob making millions of dollars off of his DC sponsorship and all this stuff. Big Black started Big Black Clothing. He ended up making a couple $1 million off of that. I was like, okay, well, I can get something. You know what I mean? Like, I can get some sort of sponsorship. So I went around to everyone, like literally Echo, every brand that I possibly could, and begged for, my number was $500 a month. And so because of this mutual acquaintance, I met with D and them. And I said, hey, man, I'm on this show, blah, 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 $500 a month. I'll wear 5'4" head to toe. It'll be so dope. And they were like, we don't really do that. And like, you're not really on the show enough. And I was like, shit, man. Like, I'm third in line is not enough to be in the money, right? It cuts off after 2. So I'm like, fuck. So when Fantasy Factory came around and I wanted to start a line, and it was on me to go figure that out from scratch. I met with everyone that I knew in clothing, and they were one of them. And at that point, obviously the conversation is a lot different, and I'm a lot bigger part of that show now. And I had this concept, and I got lucky that they were in a situation where they needed a good, healthy income from somewhere. You know what I mean? They needed cash. And so they were like, screw it. We don't have anything to lose. Let's try this. And, it just worked that way. But it's funny. I told him, like, if you would have just paid me $500 a month, you never would have had this problem. You know what I mean? Like, you look what you created. But it was just from mutual relationships, and he was just one of the people that I met with. But I just love them, and they saw it. And the cool thing about them was they had enough experience to know how to do what needed to be done, but they weren't in a competing brand.
Right.
And so I wasn't going to have to compete with them. We were going to be able to legitimately go down this road and build this business together. Not just like, one of the options is you go to DC and you say, hey, maybe you or one of the sales guys here will do a deal with me to do like a licensing thing. And but then you're competing with your own company, and that's that sucks.
So originally it wasn't like he was sponsoring you with 5'4", that was in the past, and then you guys just decided to start Young and Reckless, a new brand.
Yep. Yeah. The past was I had tried. He denied me.
Yeah.
And then we came back, and at that point I had the name. Like, I had the name Young and Reckless. I think that I had the logos at that point, and then I had the fact that this new show was about to start, and Big Black had moved to Texas to raise his daughter, and I was now the second in line, right? And so now I should be in the money now, right? And so that was the thing.
Why the name Young and Reckless?
I really, really wanted to create. So number one, my biggest fear was creating Drama's merch brand. And if this makes any sense, like the way that my brain worked then and still works now, and sometimes it haunts me when I'm trying to create all this content, was I didn't want to be a celebrity that sold product. The way I thought of myself was I wanted to be like more in the background. I just wanted to run a business. Like I wanted to have a real life in LA. I didn't want to worry about trying to pump myself up to make money. It felt like being a stripper almost, right? Especially because it's not based on any talent. Like I'm not trying to sell more albums or hit more home runs. Like I'm whatever. I'm not that guy. So that's all I wanted. So I tried to come up with a name that meant something. And I tried to think like, how can I create a movement, a culture? How can I get people really behind this? And if I have a company, called Drama Beats Clothing or called, Gray Chair Clothing, like that's not going to do it. And so Young and Reckless was just what came to mind after a lot of bad ideas. And it, I just wanted to inspire kids. I felt like I was in the trenches of like moving from an uncomfortable place, extending myself as far as I could to try to make something happen. And I wanted to try to empower people to do the same.
Would you say that Young and Reckless is a good reflection perhaps of what you were when you were moving out of Ohio?
1,000,000%. So that's what I try to, I've refined it now because I've gotten older and gotten better perspective and more knowledge, but that's what I want to happen. And to be honest, I don't care if like you just want to go on a vacation and jump off of this famous cliff in Ibiza into the ocean, like that's your dream, or you want to skydive in Dubai, or you want to be an entrepreneur and whatever. It's that same spirit that's in all of those people that do anything. It's so hard to break out of what is expected of you or the mold that you are taught is right. It's so hard. And that is what I truly connect with and feel like I did and still try to do to this day. And I want to try any way I can to empower young people to do the same. And through the messaging of the brand, it's just one of those ways.
Yeah, I love that because, so Pat and I, one of our favorite books is Simon Sinek's Starts With Why.
Oh my God.
And, kind of like talking about, and we tell a lot of our friends that reach out to us and say, oh, we have this idea. And before we tell them, like, before they tell us about what it is, we're like, why are you doing it? Like, what's the point of it? Like, I don't care what you're selling. I don't care what you're doing. Why are you doing it?
Yep.
And they can't answer that. And I say, go back, think about that, come back, and then we'll discuss it. Yep. So do you think that the why of Young and Reckless or just drama in general has changed since you came to LA?
No, I really don't. I feel, to be honest, that part of my mentality feels completely like intact and the same. And I almost wake up today with the exact same feeling that first hits me as I did when I was 19 living in a studio apartment in the Valley. Like, it's like, all right, like you got to figure this shit out. Like you got to be aggressive. You got to be creative. Like, and like nothing's going to be, you could very easily be working at Starbucks or back in Ohio in a year if you don't, like I just feel that way. And I don't think I ever want to lose that. You know what I mean? And that is what I still want to empower kids to do. I think the only thing that has changed is when I was 25 and Young and Reckless started becoming very successful. Keep in mind, every day I was like jumping into foam pits and getting attacked by bulls and like crazy shit for TV. Yeah. So my mind was a little bit more on like, all right, let's do crazy shit. It's now evolved into something much more realistic and much more truly me. That is like, okay, now I've ran this business for 9 years. I truly know a lot of, and obviously have a million things to learn, but I know a lot of good business lessons and kind of life lessons and mindset lessons. And so I'm able to come at it now from a much more educated perspective and give practical, real advice on how you do that, as opposed to like, just be crazy, do anything that anyone says you can't. Like, great, but where does that go? So now being able to do a podcast, being able to do podcasts like this and really answer those questions, I think I'm really starting to connect with people in a deeper way than I ever have, even on reality TV, because they're getting real information. It's something they can go do tomorrow, not just like, hey, go be crazy.
You talk about how Young and Reckless has evolved since then, but kind of going back to like when you first started it, was your, obviously initially it was like, I want to just make some money because I'm not making any money through the show, and your idea was to like wear it on the show and all that, but how did it necessarily evolve? Did you have that big vision initially that this is going to be a big clothing brand one day, or was it more so like, we'll just like take every day as it comes? Right now I'm just on the show, and I don't know how long the show's gonna last, but I'm just gonna ride this out and figure it out later.
Yep. So I think the best way to answer that is like, because people always ask, did you ever think it would be this big? And the answer is yes, because of course when you start something, you're sitting in your bedroom thinking this is gonna be it, like this is gonna be the next. I remember Famous Stars and Straps was so big then, and obviously DC was exploding, and I'm like, this is gonna be the next, and we could do this, and it's about empowering kids and blah blah blah. Now, that was a very naive dream, and there was zero plan on how to get there, and like no strategy, no nothing, but it was in my like goals. But there was just a lot of ups and downs and lessons that had to be learned to even, I mean, it's been a grind. When I look at it now, I don't look at like I'm that same kid in the bedroom and say like, we did that. Like exactly what you were thinking happened. I think like, whoo, this has been a battle and we got a battle more to go to keep going where we want to go. It's a much more realistic view. But yeah, I don't know if I'm forgetting the other, was there another part of the question?
No, I mean, yeah, I was just curious, like, what was going through your mental state
and the opportunity. And I will say this, and I'm not shy about this fact, is like, and this is what led me to discovering that I need to like start a podcast and put out more content about who I actually am, because I was not some passionate clothing designer that wanted to change the fashion game. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't. I also wasn't a pro skateboarder. I also wasn't whatever. I didn't know it then, but I was an entrepreneur. I wanted to own the thought of, so keep in mind, I came here with the dream of working at a skate shop, living in a studio apartment. That unfortunately quickly evolved to the thought of owning a business that I could sustain any sort of lifestyle in LA was like mind-blowing goal dream. We got to get there. And I saw an opportunity to do that from what we were doing on TV. And I saw, I mean, obviously I was heavily influenced by like I said, DC exploded, I think from like $100 million pre-Rob and Big to like at the height, like $500 million global massive business.
Yeah.
Big Black sold, I think it was 10 or 14 $1 million worth of Big Black clothing. Rob started a brand in the kitchen while I'm sitting there every day drinking coffee, watching, called Rogue Status, which was the shirt with all the guns on it, and whatever streetwear brand out of Venice. Yeah. I watched that. I would go down to Rogue Status, which they were so cool, and they were down in Venice, and they were just hanging out outside of their shop and really creating a culture around their brand. And I watched all of this happen, and so I tried making beats. I tried doing all this other stuff, but I said, like, man, like, if I could make a clothing line that spoke to this audience, that did what I preached, what I practice, and build a culture around that and get people to feel fired up and blah, 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 and then market it on this show, like, this is the opportunity, you know? And that's what gave me the steam. I've tried a lot of shit, and I've, like, everything else, well, not everything else, but a lot of other things have not worked. This one nothing has ever felt like Young and Reckless felt when I started getting it going, because it just was perfect.
Yeah. So the drama that like everyone has seen on the show, you know, doing a bunch of crazy shit. Tell us about a crazy story that maybe they haven't seen, maybe like a business story for Young and Reckless, like behind the scenes.
Oh man, there's one that immediately comes to mind, but I don't know if I want to like potentially open the can of worms. No, fuck it. One time I did a shirt, and I want to preface this story by saying, if anyone out there listening is connected to any of the Hells Angels, I sincerely apologize, and I have nothing but respect. We did a shirt. This is when we were filming the show. One of my graphic designers, so the way that we would do it, when we were really flowing, like let's say season 4 or 5 of Fantasy Factory, Young and Reckless is working. The way it would work is I would get the shirts that were going to be in the stores when the shows aired and have them printed early and sent to my office so that I could wear that line, so that would match what was in the store.
Yeah.
So I got these, I would just get boxes of my own stuff to my office before the season, and that's what I would wear throughout the season. One of the shirts I pulled out one day, and it looked like a Guns N' Roses sort of knockoff. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is really cool. And so I wore it all over the show, loved it. Turns out, we'll say long story short, turns out the kid legitimately just took the Hells Angels logo, took off the words Hells Angels, and wrote Reckless. Right?
Big time, like, trademark violation.
Big time. Not only are these guys so good at finding anyone who uses anything near their logo, but they will make sure anyway that you don't get it and don't use it, and it's not seen anywhere that's not supposed to. And I will say, lesson learned in not only like double check your designs, but like the thoroughness of your IPs. Mm-hmm. I mean, even though they have a little bit of a benefit that I don't, I can't scare anyone, but still, they are thorough and they will be on you the moment you do it. So the point was, luckily for me, I had only worn it on TV. I hadn't actually sold it, so the damage was only so bad. But for them, that's just as bad because this skinny little dorky white guy from Ohio is repping Hell's Angels. That's worst case for them.
Right.
Point is, we ended up dealing with that the proper way in whatever legally, but I was so scared because people would call me. My friends or friends of friends would call me and be like, hey, have you gotten your ass kicked by the Hells Angels yet? And I was like, no, dude, why? And he'd be like, oh, because my friend, is up in San Jose and he knows a lot of those guys and they said like, fuck you. And the moment they see you, they're stomping you out. And I'm going around like doing autograph signings and shit like that at this point. So every city I'd go to, I'd be like, is there Hells Angels? I remember being in Arizona one time and I was like, oh no, I know there's probably a lot of them here. And so I'm petrified. Like I'm literally like having trouble sleeping. Like feeling like I'm just going to hear motorcycles outside my house one night. So anyway, the crazy part of the story is I simply was, and I'll only be so descriptive, but I was at a party that we were hosting one night in Hollywood. I think it was for X Games or something. And I came walking out and some guy grabbed me and was like, yo, let me talk to you for a second. And I was like, all right, like, do you want a photo? Like, I'm the guy from the TV show. And I looked down and he had red shoelaces and that's like one of their big things. And I was like, fuck, like here it is, right? This
is how it goes down.
This is how it goes down. And so thankfully, I mean, he didn't beat my ass. He just took me outside and like very sternly made it clear how offensive that was to them and whatever. But it was just the only moment where I really felt like, fuck, like this is some real shit. Like this is not Forever 21 lawsuit. Like you're up against the wall outside of a club. Like what the fuck are you doing? Because at the end of the day, and here's another lesson learned, doesn't matter if it's the Hells Angels or Forever 21 or whatever it is. If you're the guy in charge, you're the guy taking the heat, no matter what. And I deserve that. I should have known. I should have checked everything. I should have known. But that was the moment when I think like streetwear clothing turned into like gang war for a second. You know what I mean? I didn't like it. I'm happy in apparel.
Yeah. The topic of relevancy to me is something that's interesting. And, especially in this day and age, it's so hard to stay relevant. Whether you're creating content, apparel, selling food, it's hard to kind of keep up with the times. You mentioned you've been doing this for 9 years. How is Young and Reckless still relevant today, and what have you done to make sure that stays that way?
I'll start by saying it's insanely hard, like beyond hard, and I don't ever want to come off like, oh, I'll tell you how, because I battle every single day, and every day I feel like, this is getting crazy, because every day there's 500 more influencers or YouTubers or it's so fragmented.
And fashion brands coming out and changing the landscape.
Yes, and like picture this, even when I started, which was kind of at the beginning of all of this, when I started, there was essentially still like a handful of like celebrities or TV shows. Like we even gave our clothing one time to like the Jersey Shore kids because who cares? There's 5 million people. That's going to make an impact. This, that.
I mean, they're definitely reckless.
They're definitely reckless. So you could kind of pinpoint like, who can we target them? As long as enough of them are wearing your clothes, you have some relevance, and you can use that content to say everyone's wearing your brand. Now, not only are there so many influencers and people who influence the way people shop, but there's e-commerce. So you can't just play the shelf space game of like PacSun, Macy's, Tilly's and say, well, I have my shelf space. As long as I keep it up, I'm going to keep or grow that shelf space. Nothing is safe. Nothing is protected. And the moment one of the YouTube kids launches a merch brand, that's coming out of our pocket. That's coming out of everyone's pocket, right? It's getting more fragmented. So every tour merch, every YouTube merch, every single thing is a t-shirt that they're now buying from that person and not from brands like me. So it has gotten extremely hard. To answer the question, though, I think that it's about a game of, number one, you got to just work your ass off. And you got to I've seen a lot of people be too picky and be like, no, that guy's not right. And that guy doesn't fit the brand. And that guy doesn't whatever. You want to protect your brand. You really do. But at the end of the day, if you want to have a brand the size of the brand that I want to have, you have to kind of spray and pray a little bit. And you have to make sure that you're not touching on anything too crazy on either end, but you're getting it out there. You're talking to people. You're going to the events that matter. You're at the things that matter. You're doing the podcast. You're constantly making sure that it stays on people's radars and handing it out. And I mean, I still to this day, probably today, I will screenshot and send 10 boxes of promo to friends or people that asked or friend of a friend or whatever. that's still me 10 years in at this level in the company. It's just a game you have to play. And I don't know, man. I think other than that, you just gotta be smart. And at the end of the day, like what you said with the Simon Sinek book, if you didn't start with any purpose, this is where you get wiped out.
Yeah.
You get wiped out in the relevance, right? Young and Reckless has lasted so long, a lot because of the name and what it stands for. And that does a lot of work for me. You know what I mean? If it's, like I said, gray chair clothing, and we're just hoping for the best, good luck. You know what I mean? That's why the why matters so much. Because now it's going to connect with people that you didn't even have to connect with. You know?
So 9 years, still going strong. Tell us, I want to kind of talk about kind of what you're doing aside from Young and Reckless, which is you obviously have a podcast of your own, Short Story Long. You do group chat with D. You know, tell us kind of how that content side came about and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so it came about, there's a few things. Like it came about from the gift and the curse of being on a show like I was on is you have millions of eyeballs on you and people like what you guys are doing and you can sell product. The bad thing for me was that as I went on to like grow and evolve, I had been shown to millions of people on a very popular show in a way that didn't represent really what I was. And it was impossible for me to scale that personality. You know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do? Go do another show about me being stupid in some city? You know what I mean? Like, it's never going to work. So I just realized I took a break a little bit after the show, which I felt like was necessary for kind of like if Drama from Fantasy Factory would have came out and been like preaching to you on a podcast, you'd be like, shut up, dude. You know what I mean? And I think like it needed that time to just show and prove that you could actually do this. And then I just thought to myself, like, what is my why? Who am I really? Like, what can I build on? And that is that I'm a uneducated, meaning no college, high school education, kid from a small town in Akron that just came out and fought for his life and figured this shit out the non-conventional way. And now I'm living the, what I would say, entrepreneurial dream for someone from a place like that. And I think that it's my job to build on that and share those stories and tell other people's stories as much as I can and kind of bring that all home and continue to build and let the next people go do that. You know what I mean? Damn, I just lost my train of thought again.
Well, we're talking about you doing like just overall content. Like that's a big part of your life now.
Sorry, I keep... So the next thing is, so that's why I started the podcast. That's why I kind of went down this road because you need to find out, once again, you need to find out what is even your message before you can build a bunch of content on top of that. Because if it's just, hey, look at me, it's tough.
Yeah.
So that was my message. That's what I want to get across. The first step was a podcast because it's very, you know, there's no rules. I didn't have to wait on anyone. I didn't have to go get a deal. I could just do it and post it. And that started the momentum. I think that when I started Young and Reckless, just to give a timestamp, the way that it used to work was like the people, the CEOs or the founders of the company were supposed to be kind of cool and mysterious and like you could just play this character a lot and people supported this weird thing. That's done. That's over. Now they want to see how you're building the business. What are you doing? Like, what does this actually mean? Why am I going to buy this shirt from you? Because if not, I'm going to go buy it from Logan Paul because he's funny and I like that catchphrase. You know what I mean? You need to really connect more than ever before. And that's the goal. And I think that really what's coming is I think that we're in an era of content like Instagram short form content, YouTube vlogs and that stuff. A lot of the stupid stuff kind of blew up because I think people didn't realize how much attention it was really even taking from them. You know, like you're just on your phone. You don't think when you're on your phone 6 years ago that it's becoming your new television.
Right.
You're just on your phone. You're just watching funny cat videos or funny whatever. And then all of a sudden now in 2018, this is the TV, this is the cable network, your phone is everything. And just being honest, a lot of pointless shit is really, really popular. And that's the age of kind of this influencer thing. That really gets something. I think that what is coming and where that will evolve to is the people that can connect as good as a YouTuber or an influencer, but has something real to show. That's why I think that Will Smith starting YouTube and Instagram has been like the greatest gift we've ever been given by Will Smith, because it's somebody who's speaking the vlog language. He's not trying to be too cool. He's not doing any of that. He's talking directly to you like some 16-year-old kid, but he's Will Smith. And he's going on Jimmy Fallon and he's filming a movie and he's bungee jumping from Tom Cruise's helicopter, whatever the hell he's doing.
Right.
And that's, of course, going to overshadow somebody just messing around, meaning nothing all day long. So I think that, like, I'm on the right side of where this thing's going. And I think that my goal is to, as transparently as I can, show people my real journey and real stories of other people's journeys, and say, by exposing you to this, you can do it too.
Yeah. Right? And you talk about how much, content there is these days, and like it's so saturated, like any type of medium you think of, like just content.
Yeah.
How important is it? And this is, I think, just a general good business lesson, is like to have this kind of niche. Because I think where we see a lot of people kind of just fall short is like they just kind of shoot for just general like public, where they don't really focus on something. I don't know, how important is that to you, and do you feel like you have like a target that you're trying to like really connect with?
Yeah. So the way I see it is this: like, there's so much content needed, it's insane. Like, it's like, to even have a shot, you need a podcast, a daily vlog, blah blah blah. Your Instagram's popping, this, that, whatever. It's mind blowing how much you have to do to make an impact. And I think that quantity matters over quality much more than we know. Right? It's the quality of the message, not the quality of the video.
Yeah.
And I think that for the amount of content that's actually needed to even potentially have a shot, if you don't have a core sort of value or target, now you just have a lot of nothing. You know what I mean? Like, one of the reasons why I like, for instance, what Gary Vee is doing, he's putting out so much content.
Unreal.
But
it's like insane.
It's insane. But what I'll say is, he's not reinventing the wheel every time he makes a video. It's a lot of the same shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it works, because he stays very on brand and on message, and it allows him to put out 50 videos a day on all these different platforms. It's the only way it's possible. So if you say, like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to conquer the world with content. I'm going to make 5 videos a day on every platform, but I don't really know what my message is. You're screwed. You're just dead. And you got to find who's even right for this brand or this message. Be honest with yourself and with them about if they're right for it or not, and follow kind of what people are saying and what people are gravitating to, and then expand on that and keep learning yourself. Like, don't ever become someone who's just sitting preaching over and over and over. Once again, just to use, I'm not even the biggest Gary Vee fan, but another thing he does really well that I think separates him is, you see him actively working. Like, he's in the back of an Uber. He's outside. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not all clean.
His
and like,
content
what does
is
this
him
guy
at
even
work.
do? Yeah. Like, it's like you're literally like in an airport.
He's not sitting
right
at
now.
home like staring at a camera.
Yeah,
He's
or like a perfectly
in action.
produced video, like, you need to get out there and hustle. Like, it's just like, who are you, guy? What do you even do?
Yeah.
So I think that that's really cool, because it's authentic and it's real. And I just think, like, that's where it's going. My core audience, if I said I had one, is that it's people like me. It's people that maybe don't have the ability to go the conventional route, or more importantly, in 2018, more people that realize that there is no conventional route anymore. It doesn't exist unless you're a doctor or a scientist or whatever. So if you connect with that, I'm here to show you, as someone who has spent 12 years going the non-conventional route and has been relatively successful, and is still actively every day fighting my ass off to continue to go the unconventional route. Join me. I'll share with you what I know now, and I'll share with you everything that I'm learning from here forward.
Yeah, we talked about media a lot, and one of the guests we had studied journalism while she was in college, and now she's like an influencer and just killing it, making a lot of money. And we were talking about how journalism essentially is dead. And I'm a big fan of group chat, by the way, with you and D, and I think that all the topics that you guys discuss are not only like the current topics, but I think the, just the regular person's, opinion that you guys put on it is what we need to hear.
I searched Kanye West on YouTube, and you guys were like one of the top videos. Did you know
Really?
that? Yeah. I don't know if that was just because like I hadn't watched the video, so it wasn't like a recently viewed. It was. It's just because it's relevant.
Good. I mean, we're definitely trying to market it. Like, we're
Yeah.
putting some spend behind it, but that's big.
No, yeah, it's great, and I think that Donald Trump, for example, is a big reason why media is changing. And, I think the way he's saying it is wrong, but I think it might be doing good for media in the sense that, he's revealed this phenomenon of fake news, or just people like clickbait and just putting out bullshit out there that's really not relevant. It's really not valuable. How does, first of all, how did you and D come up with the idea to say, we got to do this thing? And, why do you choose the topics that you choose to talk about, and who are you trying to impact?
Yep. So the idea was mainly sparked by, after Complex Con this year, we love Complex Con, big fans of what they're doing. We think it is the future. And Bobby Hundreds, who's also a friend, posted a tweet or something, or Instagram, just destroying it, right? And saying like, it's whack and it's capitalist and it's blah, blah, blah. And that's not what streetwear is and that's not whatever. And we were in here kind of debating about it and saying our opinions or whatever. And and I think he said, man, we should just film this. We should just put this out. And whatever happened, right? I don't know who had the genius idea, but I don't want to take any credit. But we decided, man, we could do something like this. Like we could just show these debates. And like, luckily we work for ourselves and we don't have board members. We don't have those type of things. And so we don't have anything that we can't say. It's at our own risk, right? And so we said, let's do something where we can actually give a little bit deeper inside opinion. And then we can have Bobby Hundreds come on the show and we can have Aaron from Agenda come on the show and we can have, whatever. And we just thought like you're right. I mean, there's a lot of news going around. There's a lot of opinions going around. And there's a lot of like stupid sort of pointless clickbaity comedy, like you go on Instagram, like I hate to say it, a lot of times I get my news from Instagram on accident because you see a meme about it and you're like, oh, what did Kanye say? Because you saw some meme.
Exactly.
And so for us, it was like, how can we do a show that's like letting people in on our real conversations, getting a little bit deeper knowledge on the subject, and then also having fun with it, and hopefully we're likable, and hopefully you do, you know what I mean? And it's like we just try to cover anything. It still needs a lot of work, and it needs to be cleaned up a lot, and it needs to be structured a lot, but it's like anything that really affects this age range and people like us, we're going to cover. And hopefully we're going to give you some value that's going to, I think most people will walk away from group chat and say like, man, I didn't know that. Like maybe it was fun to watch and we were still joking around, but it was like, oh, I didn't know that about this or about that or how this works. And that's our goal. It's just we're trying to be a little.
To the point about it being clean, I respectfully disagree because I feel like when I turn on the television, which I rarely do, but when I watch, news, it is clean. It's like a little too perfect. It's a little too scripted.
What did I say about clean though?
You said it should be a little bit more cleaned up. Like, I don't know if you meant like the content or the quality or whatever, but I like the fact that it's raw. I like the fact that.
Oh, you mean our show
with the group chat?
This is what I mean. I think that, for instance, and I'll just tell you because this is what we were talking about the other day, is like it should be like here's the finance section. And we're going to talk about this. Here's politics. We're going to talk about this. Here's blah, blah, blah. Just like structured. And like I said, we had the idea and we could have Bobby Hundreds and Aaron come on maybe together if they would do it. Maybe not. We're just so fucking busy. We haven't had a chance to do it. We've had our friends on or whatever. I mean, like if it was like this week's guest is blah, blah, blah. This is what we're going to discuss. Here's our topics. I'm saying he emails me what he wants to talk about. I email him what I want to talk about the morning of. We go up at 10. And we just literally just film it live in one shot. That's what you get. And we could add some, some like structure. It's just a little messy. It's just a little like we'll talk about Trump, politics, streetwear, Stormy Daniels. Then, you know what I mean? It's like, and it's like there's no.
But that's what people want. I think that.
And maybe
unfortunately,
you're
that's what news is this day. And I think like actually one thing that does piss me off is like with the whole Trump thing. I think that the media is the reason why he is this way. I think Pat and I talk about this all the time. If for 1 week there was a moratorium on news for them to not talk about Trump, he would be a completely different person. Because he requires the attention. I think that folks, like us that continue talking about him, it like feeds him. Like it's like more fuel.
But I almost feel like it's almost like a chicken before the egg scenario to me. It's like, did the media create Trump or did Trump create I don't know, and all I know is this. It's fucking mind-blowing, and it's like an incredible thing to watch. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how did this happen? Like, what in the fuck?
You're just watching, like, history just change, and it is.
Change. It will never be the same. Like, you just can't go back. I'm not saying the next one will be like The Rock, but
it might.
It might. And you can't. It's not going to be George Bush. No. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah.
And at that part I appreciate. Like I will say, that's another thing that Rob even to this day gives me really good perspective on. Is he's smart and we agree on the opinions, but he's so incredibly positive. Like every time I talk to him, I'm like, bro, did you see what just happened? He's like, isn't this incredible? Like, isn't this amazing to watch? And I'm like, no, we're gonna die. He's like, we're not gonna die. This is amazing. And I'm like, holy
and I think
shit.
you and D on the last episode of Group Chat well, after we release this might be the second to last episode. You talked about like the different perspectives and how perhaps not necessarily that what he's doing is positive, but that there is a different perspective to Trump, for example, or there's always a different side to the story.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like 50 or whatever, 48 or 50% of this country still likes Trump or still will vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And, it's a whole other problem. But it's how do we cater that to both of these sides so that the message that we put across, and I think that's why we chose to do this podcast, was because number one, we're just talking about the real human stories. There's really no politics involved. You can be whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can believe in whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. We don't really care.
Yeah.
But I think that the audience has a real takeaway of, like, I don't give a shit if this person's Republican and, like, believes in that or that. They just did something cool.
Yeah.
And we want to learn that. We want to kind of follow that model.
Yep.
And so I think, what you guys are doing obviously is awesome. And,
Thank you, man.
Hopefully we continue seeing, more of that and, just putting out more content. And who knows what this will all lead to, really. You know, I don't really know. I don't know. Both of us don't really know what this will even lead to. But
It's going to continue to evolve, and you just got to play the game.
And to tie it back to the beginning, man, it's like it's where the action is.
Yeah.
We know that. That's undeniable, right? The action is in creating content with a message on brand for yourself, whatever it is, and it's podcasting and it's video blogs and it's so it's like
it's podcasting now, right? Like, but like tomorrow it might be something different. And like you said in the beginning, like if you're focused on like I'm going to create the biggest podcast in the world, and I'm only going to be focused on creating the biggest podcast in the world, you may miss the next big channel.
100%. And I think the sweet spot is in the middle, right? It's like sure, podcasting could kind of phase out, but I think that it will phase into something new that if your message is strong enough, your people will follow you too, right? And I think that I have quite a bit of faith that podcasting is a new medium that is here for quite a while. Yep. I don't see it as like a Snapchat. Like it's a medium. It's radio. It's not, the station. Yep. And I think that as long as you're building that audience and that message, they're there no matter what the medium is. Like that's one thing we told ourselves that made us really reassured us a little bit when retail was just getting crushed and we had just spent the last 7 years building in retail, was the audience is there. The people who like young and reckless clothing is there. They are just moving to shopping online. So we need to switch to being online, right? So the people are there, the listeners are there, and it's just, this is where the action is. It's clear as day. It's nowhere else. So just like when I started Young and Reckless or got in on the TV show, I had no idea where it was going to lead, but the action's always going to lead you to the best place. It's the best option. Yeah.
Drama, I kind of want to know with this question is like you are an extremely hard worker. I can imagine like having all these things going in one day is a lot to do. And you still got that fire going. Like, what do you do outside of all this? Do you have family? Do you have anything else you're doing?
Yeah, I've gotten better at that recently, right? So I do think for a long time. So don't get me wrong, like I'm not some like crazy, all I do is work and then sit in my room and think about work. But like I never really had like skateboarding kind of phased out around like 26. Now it's just I do it once every few months, but it's just super painful. Yeah, I'm getting old and I don't have like any hardcore hobby, or anything like that. But I have gotten a lot better lately in the last couple of years at like reading. Like it sounds, I genuinely really enjoy it now. And the first book that sparked me that like books are incredible was Start With Why with Simon Sinek. Yeah, I read that. I'm like, this is.
I did not know that, by the way. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I read that first. That might have been the first book I ever read in my life, honestly. Really? And from front to back. And
I watched his TED Talk first. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, he's amazing. I watch a lot of his stuff. Yeah. But so I genuinely enjoy reading. I genuinely enjoy working out now. I'm learning to like meditating. Stuff like that. So what's happening to me now? I feel like the way that I describe it is, I came up here. I was like full throttle. I'm in LA. Do everything you can. Just like chug Red Bulls and get it done. And it just maxed out at like 27, 28. Like you just can't live that way. Yeah. And I just was super depressed and bummed out and nothing made sense. And at the same time, Young and Reckless was having trouble with retail. And it was just a very bad time. Yeah. And so that's what led me to like, okay, what's the right way to do this? And I've learned so much from the guests on my podcast. And I've learned so much from these books that I've read. And I just now am truly taking control of my calendar, when I have time off, I have time off, and I whatever it is, watch a documentary, read a book, exercise, do those things, and just being more balanced that way.
Right.
But I don't. I still wish I would just loved bow hunting or something. You know what I mean? But I haven't found that yet.
Yeah.
You're too young for that.
Yeah, but am I or jujitsu or something? You know,
Perhaps.
actually, I'm an avid spear fisherman.
Yeah.
And on the weekends,
Makes
I
for
head
an
down
interesting
there.
story.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I have one more fun question. I asked a few
please.
of our guests. It has nothing to do with really anything. But if you were to create your own flavor of frozen yogurt, Pat's probably thinking, God, I don't know why this guy's asking this question. But what would it be if you had to create your own flavor of frozen yogurt?
I'm trying to think of what the most delightful thing in the world is. Shit, that's hard, man.
Brian Toll couldn't answer it. John Terzian said gold. Because he wanted, he was thinking.
Answer. Did D answer it?
We didn't ask D. This was a new kind of thing. What else were the other answers? We had
we've gotten seaweed.
Seaweed.
We've gotten lavender.
It's a tough question.
I know, but it shouldn't be. And there should. I mean, I need. What I'm trying to think of is something that I have smelled that's not edible that I really wanted to eat. You know what I'm saying? I was gonna say fresh
what about
laundry,
gas?
but I don't know that would taste good.
Do you like the smell of gas?
I'd love the smell of gas.
Yeah, I love it.
If
I wonder
you
how it
could
tastes.
I wonder. Okay, if you could make this is gonna sound crazy. If you could make frozen yogurt that tasted exactly like gasoline smells,
It would be incredible.
Or like a new car. Or one of those smells that you're just God, where does this come from?
or even a freshly bleached, bathroom.
Yeah.
You're just it's good in here.
So every
that.
chemically kind of just things that can kill you.
just terrible things.
But you're not using those chemicals, just the scent
Yes.
in that flavor.
Yeah, if you could just.
I feel like people have gotten really good at that, making flavors out of scents.
Yeah,
I don't know,
we have a new challenge.
donuts and
Yeah.
There's a new challenge for the world then.
Yeah, there we go. Launching
Gasoline smell.
like that.
There we go.
Drama, it's been a great conversation. Thanks so
Guys,
much for
this is
being on the
amazing.
show.
Thank you guys so much.
you.
Hope I didn't talk too much.
No, you're great.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.